We've got some sneak peeks today. We're excited to tell you about them. As usual, we have new to LCI, although I recognize everybody's name on this call, so I don't think we have anybody needing that right now. But if you're listening to the recording, please be sure to join us on Wednesdays for new to LCI. You can find us at the 7-Figure event in Austin in October, Robin Robbins and IT Nation in Orlando. And they are coming up. I can't believe that already. You can also find us at DattoCon virtual next week. So if you are walking around some virtual booths, we will be there. Amy and I have the morning shift and Alex has the late shift. It is open 8 a.m. to midnight Eastern time. So stop by and see us. And then
if you come by after 8 p.m., I may be drinking. So come on and hang out.
Yeah, if you want the happy hour.
In full trade show fashion, like I can't let it go to waste.
That's fair. You get a very different happy hour with Amy and me as the morning people. So Amelia Paro from ID Agent and I are pretty excited to knock out your QBR head trash in a cat fight on Tuesday. We're not fighting each other. We're fighting with some killer QBR strategies. So please do join us for that. I have the link to put in the chat. When I grab all the things. So Kirk, I'm going to tell you what goodies we're going to have at our live booth in Orlando momentarily. So let me make sure I do not talk out of order. So since it is the end of the mental health awareness week, some things that are good for my mental health. I appreciate all of the feedback I get from our partners and chatting with folks, and have been pretty entertained with some of the responses and tickets and things that folks have sent over to our support team this week in appreciation of their hard efforts. So I definitely appreciate that. So today we're going to talk about, there is a release coming next week. And I want to make sure everybody sees a bit of that. So we've got 3 different pieces we're going to talk about here. The first being, can someone let William in? It's not letting me click the button. Oh, there, I got him. Okay. So the very first thing I'm going to do is hop into a walkthrough of the release that will be happening probably next Friday. So eyes open for this one. There are not a lot of features that are going out with this one, but you can see you'll see it's a little snappier, a little faster, and it's a cleaner, fresher look. But when you log in, you can log in with single sign-on. William, you came in just in time. I know you were waiting for that. So Google or Microsoft authentication will do. You want to unmute?
Just for me, I love you guys. I mean, I'm going to keep sending you wonderful emails. No.
So he sent an email with like 3 pretty pleases and a cherry on top and something else requesting single sign-on. And we were literally working on it that day. So we accidentally replied with, it's on our roadmap and in process. And then I replied back and said, we'll do it just for you, William. So, so we're excited about that. And we know lots of folks have asked about single sign-on. So that will be good for everybody. Save a little time and finding your phone, which is always my struggle. So you can see with the update, again, things are a little fresher. I'm going to click through some of the screens so that you can see all of the functionality. So none of the functionality has changed, right? We didn't even move too many of the buttons. We have just given it an updated look. So you'll notice that our drop-down picker at the top looks a little bit different. Our searches are all consistent. We're trying to make everything much more consistent. We're tightening up some spaces so that you can always find the downloads in the same location. And our multi-select lists are now much easier. If you have multi-selected before, you know that sometimes that feels a bit like you're chasing one of them around. So that's a lot tidier as well. A couple of the pieces on the budget forecast, we've moved the tabs to this floating menu bar, headers here, and reporting options you'll notice is not in the gear, but is a whole tab. We now have enough new reporting options inside the budget forecast that we felt like it warranted its own space. So looks there will be slightly different, but otherwise everything should function the same way, just look a little tighter, work a little faster, etc. The one piece that did go out this week was in, and I put a note in our Facebook group. So if you're not a member of the Facebook group, please be sure to hunt down Lifecycle Insights user group. And I can give you the link to that. It's in our Jamboard. So when I get back to that, I'll put it in the chat, or Amy, if you want to drop it in.
Yep.
Thank you. So let me just show you that if I grab an assessment and now go to the download, in the assessment form detail only, so not the one that is selected by default, but if you click into assessment form detail, you now get include explanation remediation if they exist, and include scoring instructions if they exist. So these are new options for that download. So I'm going to go ahead and download that just to show you. So you'll see, again, this is the form details. So this is the page that shows all of, the options exactly like you would view them in the assessment, but you can see on the power management question that we had included an explanation remediation tip, and that is now included on the on the item just below it. And then scoring instructions for workstation are below the score. You've got scoring instructions and explanation remediation below workstations because they were associated with it. So that gives another reporting option. We're hoping to sneak in a few more assessment features also by next week, but that'll just be more Easter eggs for you on October. So any comments, questions, complaints about the refresh on this? We're doing a lot of QA. We've certainly beaten it up quite a good bit and clicked all the buttons. So we're confident and we like the look and feel better. But as I said, one of the things that definitely gets our juices flowing is feedback from folks, good, bad, or otherwise, because we like to know if we're moving in the right direction or not. So if you have any feedback for us, we would love to hear it. As I move from there, Alex was, projects will be turned into recommendations. That's the other piece. People have been asking when we're going to change the name. Projects will turn it, so you can see when I clicked in projects, recommendations list instead of projects list. So a couple of folks have asked when that's going to happen. That name change will happen next week as well. So that's good fair warning on that.
What about, I think you've talked, so this all looks fantastic. Have you mentioned before that the text editor for Report Builder is being updated as well?
So we have a couple pieces. It's not being updated in this one, but we do have some requests around Report Builder because there are a few little bug pieces. That's not, and that is more how we deal with the third-party text editor. So that is a third-party tool, but that's not going out in this release.
To that point, though, if you're trying to do something in text editor that it's giving you a hard time about, either one, try the Word document importer because you can do a lot in Word docs and import them, and two, grab us, get on the phone with us and let us look at what you're having an issue with, because I know there's some things in it that are less than ideal, but if we don't see the use cases, it's harder for us also in the future to kind of plan for where you're struggling with it. So any feedback you can give us either with a recorded video or jumping on the phone with us would help.
The other piece is just take note up here that we have VCIO as an option at the top in the future, and this will lead to some other things. We're going to move administration up here as our list down the left-hand side is getting longer, and more to come on that in just a bit. So it's interesting when we first started. So first, I thought, and William, you weren't on when we got the very first, when we played the video at the beginning around mental health, and they asked us, and Alex and I were on it, but they asked us to show emotion when we got our first customer, or when we, when we got fired from a job, when we this, that, or the other. And so I was hoping you would be here since you were here at the very beginning. And it's interesting, when we first started researching around QBR and VCIO tools, which Alex had done for 5 years, looking for one prior to working with the rest of us. There was a lot of talk about QBRs, and I always say it was like the weather. Everybody was talking about it, but nobody was doing anything about it. And so as we build the QBR VCIO tool, because everybody's talking about it and sharing feedback with us, it helps because that leads our development. So in that same vein, we have been hearing things around customer success. So I don't know, those of you that know my background, I'm going to tell it to you one more time. So my apologies. So I come from, Alex came from the world of MSP, and Amy came from the world of MSP, and I came from the world of customer success. And I started out with the toughest customers, which were high school students, and then landed in an ed tech space as customer success manager. And we got acquired. No joke. Those were all true actual acquisitions. And I ended up with a huge team, 20 million ARR, of which we were responsible for the renewals on. But in doing that, we did a lot of digging into creating a process and finding products to help us answer questions that a lot of CSMs and a lot of CSMs had, and found ways to automate metrics around customer success. So we've been hearing more recently in the space from many of you and others, folks asking questions around, and can Lifecycle Insights help us with data on things like, where are our customers at risk? Where are they aligned to our stack? Where are customers who are our raving fans? Where are our customers with the most opportunity? And where are our customers that are scheduled for a QBR? Have we missed QBRs? All of that tracking. And a lot of that we already have built into Lifecycle Insights, but there are a lot more metrics around customer health, segmenting clients, et cetera, that we haven't addressed, and that I have a lot of experience in from my world as customer success. So on November 10th, as we heard more and more of these questions, we decided that I should write a book and answer some of these questions for MSPs, to figure out the data on how aligned are my accounts with our standards and practices, what opportunities are created by lack of alignment, what risks are created by lack of alignment, which clients are at risk of churn, which clients are at risk of churn due to a change in company leadership, which clients represent an oversized share of our revenue, making their departure a more dire event, where are my biggest opportunities, which customers will I be meeting with in the near future, and which QBRs are scheduled and required to prep, that type of thing. So somewhere along here, I have a screenshot. I had a screenshot, but we'll just show you that in the works is the book called Literally, the book on customer success for MSPs. So excited to say that will be launching in November, and would love to share with all of you. So if you will be at IT Nation, Kirk, you asked what will be in our booth. We will have books to give away. So if you will be there, we would love to give you one. But part of what we did in writing the book was really take the feedback that we've gotten from folks about the processes that we could build to answer some of the customer success questions. So the book is not the exciting piece for November. The exciting piece for the November is we are going to be launching our second module, and that will be a customer success module. So, and it's super hard talking to only a couple faces when there are all of these just names on the screen. So Matt and Amy, I sure appreciate having your cameras on. I'm going to give you some sneak peeks into what we are building. This is a second module and add on to Lifecycle Insights. Thanks, Glenn, for sharing. Because we're pretty excited about this. So the notion for this is it is a customer success tool. So Alex and I have been talking about this for a long time. You hear about it more and more in the space. A lot of people talk about customer success, and there's not one set definition around it. So you hear names of roles like account managers, VCIOs, customer success managers, their sales teams. They all kind of play a part in customer success. But customer success teams often get left out of owning their own place to do the work. So we find a lot of customer success. So in doing the work that I used to do in the ed tech space, I was very familiar with customer success platforms. There's Gainsight, Totango, Churn Zero, Plan Hat, all of these types of tools. And when I looked around the MSP space, we did not find a tool that would be specific for for MSPs. It would be a bit of a round peg square hole type of situation for the SaaS products. So, but part of the work that they did is really important. And we felt like managed service providers had asked us for many of these pieces and didn't have a place. They're kind of duct taping pieces together. So the first portion of the platform will be to be able to segment your client base. And when I talk about segmenting your client base, I talk about taking one metric, value, and another metric, complexity, and saying, okay, my A to Z cycles pays, $811 a month. You can tell it's demo data. And they're high complexity, right? They're high compliance, they're high whatever. So that is one of my high paying clients and highly complex. So how often do I need to do a business review with them? Versus I've got a small 3-person construction firm. They're not high compliance. They're not a big heavy lift. They don't want to meet with me quarterly. They don't need to meet with me quarterly, right? We're going to put them on an annual plan and maybe we're going to automate them. So the notion of when you need a high touch, a mid touch, or a tech touch. So in the platform, you will be able to a line of value. I recommend MRR, as well as a complexity value, so that you can get insights into, so it's the same chart down below, into where your clients fall in a segment. So I know I'm a fast talker, but sometimes people need brain space to think through what they're looking at. So I'll give you a second to look at that screenshot. So in this screenshot, we will take all of your customers and place them in the segments, in the quadrants, based on the value and complexity. So this top right quadrant will hold all of your clients that are both a large portion of the AR, the high MRR, high complexity. Bottom left, maybe these are break fix folks or smaller clients, low complexity. And when we talk about high touch, this top right quadrant seems to be very high touch. What's interesting is this bottom right quadrant, which will have colors in it when it's not a screenshot from a demo site, would be more, so these are high value, low effort. Aren't these ideal clients, right? Like, yes, they pay me a lot of money. They don't require a lot of touches. These clients in the upper left quadrant, they don't pay a lot of money, but they're a lot of effort. So as you're looking at, as a customer success manager, these are the folks that I would look at to say, I need to move them. I either need to make them less complex, find ways to automate pieces, or get them to pay more money for the services, because these are my least profitable clients. And then down here at the bottom, low effort, low value. What can I do to automate the touches with this group? Because sometimes that group doesn't even want a lot of communication because they're too busy in the throes of their business, and technology isn't maybe a driving force in this. In the book, I tell a story of, I went to buy a minivan and I picked one out on the lot. And now, mind you, I'm only buying a minivan because I have to. My neighbors had a third child, and so now the carpool was too big for my Toyota Camry, and I had to buy a minivan. I did not want to buy a minivan, but I went into the dealership and I said, okay, I need to process the paperwork for that minivan out there. And they said, let me get you a test drive. I said, I don't want a test drive. And he said, my boss is going to be mad if I don't take you on a test drive. I said, your boss is going to be mad if I tell him I wanted to buy the minivan and you made me take a test drive and now I'm leaving. So if you want me to buy the minivan, you should get me that piece of paperwork, right? That's the person that doesn't want the quarterly business review because they don't see the value. I wasn't aiming for a relationship with the minivan guy. I was just aiming for a minivan. So what can you do to automate the process? Now you can buy a minivan online if you want. And are there places where we want to do that so that we can really look at our book of business and get the customers what they need the way they need it? So that's kind of the value health piece. If you're sitting here thinking, well, everything in Lifecycle Insights is colored red, yellow, and green, what do those red, yellow, greens mean? That will address customer health. So you will be able to define metrics, and we've got a few on here: sentiment, customer satisfaction, org changes, renewals, et cetera, and define a score for them. So I believe Amy's a happy life cycler. I just gave William his single sign-on just for him, so I'm sure his sentiment's at 100 today, right? If we heard that everybody was being bought today, right, maybe the org metric would drop, which might make you a little more nervous around churn rates and renewals, right? Part of customer success is how likely a client to churn or to renew. That's really your aim. You're looking at customer health to answer those questions. Who are my raving fans? Who are not my raving fans? Where do I need to do more work on the relationship side? And a lot of this right now is gut instinct. But if you're really aiming to scale your business beyond a sole owner, you can't rely on the gut, because everybody's gut does that a little bit differently. And you need a place to track all of that. So to use those metrics to get an average and say, like, hey, I think this is a green client, they're happy, healthy, and on regular cadence for meeting at QBRs, versus this is a larger threat and risk of churn. If I go back to my last chart, if you think about one of your top paying clients in this upper right-hand quadrant that's red, that probably puts a big knot in your stomach if you think about them, kind of blindsiding you and saying they're going to another managed service provider. Whereas while all clients are important, if this bottom one here that's not paying you much money and isn't much effort leaves, it doesn't cause the same level of anxiety. So if you have somebody that's maybe greater than 7% of your revenue, if they turned red for some reason, you'd really want to be able to track that, because those are some insights you need into your own book of business, not just their book of business. I always say customer success is about making them successful, and the better their success, the better your success. So I think the last sneak peek I have for you is the notion of stack alignment. So we've had a lot of requests of how can I get a view into how much of my client base is fully aligned to my stack. So we are going to work on getting those reports really visible for everyone. So this one, I'll kind of go through a bit of the columns, and then I really would love some feedback, like it, love it, hate it, whatever, because even hate it, frankly, tells us we're not investing money in the right development. So please do share. So you would have a list of services of which you can always add more, right? We always build that flexibility into the platform. And for each client, you could say, yeah, backups are a thing for this client, right? Comfort keepers, backups are a thing. And they have the product in use. And the vendor, would have a list where you could select which vendor you're using for that. And then maybe some notes like, oh, I want to switch to a different vendor for this, etc. Whether or not it's implemented or fully implemented, partially implemented, right? Maybe you have a preferred stack or in a good, better, best model, maybe they're partially aligned with your best practices. It's part of your contract. Your opportunity would be to upgrade them to Larry's backup, and then a dollar value for an opportunity amount. So this would let you have insights into how aligned they are in your stack, as well as opportunity within your stack. So you can start getting insights into not just asset lifecycle management, but other services, et cetera, that maybe is not easy to do when they're in disparate systems, but to get them all in one place. So I feel like that's a lot of new pieces.
So Is this going to be integrated somehow, do you feel, with the assessment process, or will this be like a separate?
So that's, let's talk through that. So the base module will be, this will be a separate cost to that. So I do like to say that you have to have the core module first, and then you can buy customer success on top of it. Right out of the gate, these pieces will not be automated, but we are looking at linking the item to an assessment item. So if you already have backup and it is at risk, in the same way that you can link contracts, the first thing we would do would be able to link it to an assessment item, because it makes sense, you're all in the same place, that we will deep link it to there so you can see your notes and do the work from there. The goal is right out of the gate, it'll be, it'll be an initial release for sure in November, and we'll grow from there. So initially it will be manual. I do believe the linking will be planned for that. And then we hope to eventually get that even more automated as we find where all this information is being pulled from. Is that what was that the goal there? Is that what you were thinking?
Yeah, so let me describe my feelings going through the assessments. I've often had, and I use the cyber maturity security one, I think is what it's called. And I feel like a lot of that has to do, and there's a somewhat direct correlation to many services we provide or could provide or are comfortable providing. Yeah. And then there's some that I don't want to get into, but it's something that should be acknowledged they don't have in place, type of thing. And so I've had that thought of, do I need to create an assessment directly of all the services we sell as our preferred service to see who's using it or not using it? And I feel like this is a cross between that in some ways, and there's overlap there. So that's what I'm trying to sort through in my head.
So you said something that reminded me of some piece I didn't say. In the land of service, when it comes to backups, you might have multiple products associated or multiple services aligned to backups, right? Some of which are implemented, or you have a preferred stack of, some of which you don't, right? Like but they exist in the space. So for each client, you could determine whether or not you need them to be turned on or off, right? For a particular line of products. You can have a one-to-many relationship, multiple services in a given category, and then a chosen vendor. And maybe you have your preferred vendor, and maybe you have like a better and best model for that. And maybe that notion of acceptable risk, right? Like we know they're not using our choice, but that will go along for a while, would be a land of opportunity for you, even though it's maybe healthy or at least acceptable risk in an assessment.
Yeah, one of the assessment does a nice job of getting it on paper. And then I think where things fall apart is what's the actionable closed loop process. And then the very first step of that is, if there's something out of alignment that they don't have, then what are the recommended solutions? And I think what you're touching on is there might be multiple. Some of them are our preferred, others may not be. And it seems like you're kind of leaning into that process a little bit, which is exciting.
Yeah. And would love to talk through all of those use cases, right? That is why we are a month ahead of when we plan to release the initial release, but we really wanted to start getting folks that get the nature of what Lifecycle Insights is aiming to do, and get you a sense of, is this the right direction, and get feedback on that. So I appreciate that feedback. I'm gonna look in the chat because I can see that. All right, here we go. 50 Shades of QBR. We thought we'd go with just 3. We'll go with red, yellow, green. Magic quadrant. So Lee, I have heard that before. I feel like that is a book, maybe even. Okay, yep, Alex responded to that. Does value or complexity take into account for ticket or time volume? So in my mind, that, and in the book, we have spreadsheets and worksheets. I'll give you just a sneak peek of the book, of the some of the spreadsheets we talk through. I may or may not be a little bleary-eyed from spending the last 4 weeks trying to dot all the I's and cross all the T's. So the notion is to brainstorm a list of all of the variables that may in fact impact where you would segment your customer base. So here's a list of things I just jotted down off the top of my head: MRR, size, influence, reference value, a new vertical, effort, opportunity, technology needs, industry, regulatory compliance. You could certainly add ticket or time, right? The amount of time they take you. I think the time piece would very much go toward complexity. You would then take those values and decide which ones relate, you know? So if the amount of time they take is impacting the effort, right? I see complexity and effort as the same type of variable. I would put it in the complexity column, and then you need to create rules for yourself in very typical lifecycle insights fashion. We don't make you think a certain way, right? We just want to have a flexible enough tool that you could define it for yourself. So I think value is easier. I think most folks will choose MRR, but some folks might choose users, because if you always charge by seat and they have not fully implemented for all of their users, you might see that as there's higher value than they're actually showing if we just went with the MRR they're in now. So maybe opportunity is what you go with value. So I would say time and tickets absolutely would go toward complexity. And then you define the range for yourself, right? If our MRR value is from 1,500 a month to 27,000 a month, where's your cut score? Where, like, we're aiming to get, we want customers. And I know some of you on this call have worked really hard to align who you're working with to some standards, and whether they are value dollar metric driven or complexity driven, everybody has their own view of it, but you really want to define where you would put your cut scores of what would make it, what would move them to a different quadrant, basically. So that's how I look at the complexity piece. So really, I'm reading the next part of your question, because just complex setup may not be equal to high ticket volume or effort. Absolutely. So this is very much where you would want to define for yourself, what am I going to consider my complexity metric? What makes me think like, oh, it's that customer again, right? Like they're always difficult because, and it could be things like they are a siloed company to work with, and it's hard to get an answer from them, right? That takes a lot of extra time on your part that it shouldn't. And then Alex added the other components for other variables. So Alex, I don't remember, so this is Alex Ivanov. I don't know when you jumped in, but the first piece I showed where I was working through the platform itself with the refresh of the UI will be next Friday. The part that I'm showing you now with the screenshots, we plan to release November 10th, and it will be, so initially, I'm sure we will have a special for all of our Lifecycle Insights folks and give free taste tests in the platform. But the long term, this will be an add-on module that would be a separate cost. And did you type literally on purpose? You don't literally. We were literally just talking about this type of tool yesterday. We would literally be exactly what we might be looking for. And then my book is called Literally, so I super appreciate all of the extra literallys. You have a client health spreadsheet for this, so this would be nice to have a separate spreadsheet with red, yellow, green. So when I first, in the first acquisition as a customer success manager, we had a spreadsheet where we red, yellow, greened everybody, but we in one day more than doubled our customer count. And so I got to find a tool for that. we have to do something about that. So I get that. And that really is the goal, to be able to have red, yellow, green with actionable insights and a dashboard to give you a view across all of your clients would be nice. The other piece, and we haven't mentioned on this call, but the other piece is that you will be able to assign a human to a company account, so that if you wanted to track opportunity, so if Matt, Kirk, and William were all in the same company, Matt, you could have your accounts listed, and William, you could have your accounts, and Kirk, you could have yours. So your dashboard would be unique to your group. And then you could have you could have multiple views. So we'll actually consider that a view. So I could have like a Northeast view, you know, if you had regions, if you had multiple customer success managers working, you could have insights by different views.
That would be a super MSP. We'd be like forming Voltron.
That's exactly right. Wonder triplet powers activate. Form of the Voltron MSP. I like it. So I appreciate the comments in the chat. Does anybody else have any thoughts in looking at this? And those thoughts could be like, hey, if you beta that, I want in, or like, whew, I still have to, I still have to get my asset life cycle together. Pricing. So we're thinking that it will be matched to the same module. So if you are the pro plan, it would be pro plan price. It is. Okay, thanks, Alex. So it would be a comparable price to whatever you're currently paying. So a $75 plan would be an additional $75. It's a pretty meaty platform, and we feel like delivers as much value as the core platform. Appreciate that, Kirk. Kelly, we are looking very much forward to it for sure. So Alex Farling, do you have any pieces of chime in? I don't know if you're at a spot where you can chime in.
Oh, I'm in traffic in downtown Annapolis. No worries. But no, I don't have anything to chime in other than we look forward to getting it out there and getting it in people's hands so they can see it and play with it. And we'll be talking to existing customers long before we make the push to get other folks in the platform so that we can get you guys insights on where we're doing it right and where we need to reconsider some things.
For sure. Appreciate that, Kirk. All right. Well, with that, we'll give you 15 minutes back in your day. Appreciate everybody joining us. Have good ones.